Hello again. In my ongoing review of 1970s dystopian science fiction movies, we come to another one that's not one of my favorites, and that's 1977's Damnation Alley, directed by Jack Smight, produced by 20th Century Fox, and it was written by Alan Sharp and Lucas Heller from the 1969 novel by Roger Zelazny. This is a very rough adaptation, which really bears very little resemblance to that book. Other than the main character's last name rather, is the same. It stars Jan-Michael Vincent and George Peppard, Paul Winfield, and Dominique Sanda, and Jackie Earle Haley. It takes place in, it starts out at a missile base in Barstow, California, and there's a two-man missile team, which is Tanner, played by Jan-Michael Vincent, and Denton, played by George Peppard. They don't like each other, and in the first scene, Denton says he's going to have Tanner replaced because he doesn't think he's a fitting person to work in the missile center because he doesn't take things seriously. He's kind of a slacker and a rebel, and he just doesn't like him. But they have to work together, so they go down into the facility, and they receive an alert. Apparently, there's an incoming Soviet missile strike. Well, they confirm this and with higher command, and they launch a retaliatory strike, which takes out 40% of the incoming missiles, but the rest of them hit, and the United States is devastated, basically. Cuts to 2 years later, and the World War III has taken place, and it was so bad that the nuclear detonations have tilted the Earth off its axis. There's a kind of permanent haze of radioactivity in the air that lights up like the aurora borealis. Insects have become mutated into gigantic form, which those who know violates the squared cubed law. So sorry, folks, that doesn't work. In real life, they would be crushed by their own exoskeletons. But now Tanner has quit. He doesn't want to pretend like he's in the Air Force anymore. For some reason, though, it doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. Peppard and Winfield and some others are still, at the airbase, and they're, following regulations. And, who are they taking orders from? Everybody's dead, but they go ahead and, still act like they're in the military. Tanner's become an artist, and he's drifted off by himself, and he's living in like a little shack off the airbase somewhere. Meanwhile, they're like walking around outside 2 years after a major nuclear strike with no radiation protection whatsoever. And none of them's died of radiation sickness, which I find, completely unbelievable, even at the time when I watched it. But if you can put that aside, suspend your disbelief, they are walking around, and Vincent is like scavenges for stuff, and he finds he's driving back to the airbase, and he's got what looks like a girl on the back of his motorcycle, and he's attacked by these giant mutant scorpions, and she falls off, and they tear her to pieces, and it turns out it's just a mannequin. So he's so bored that he's like driving around with mannequins on the back of his motorcycle, pretending it's a girl. He gives an airman a whole bunch of Playboy magazines that he found somewhere, and the airman is looking at him, and he's absent-mindedly smoking, and he naturally falls asleep, and his cigarette drops onto the magazine. They catch fire, and the airbase explodes, and everybody inside is killed, except for George Peppard and Jan-Michael Vincent, who were outside at the time, and Paul Winfield, who were outside at the time doing something else. So now they got to do something, and they've discovered some radio signals that they think are coming from the area near Albany, New York. They decide they're going to go check them out. They have these fantastic vehicles, and why they didn't introduce these earlier, I don't know, but they're called Landmasters, and they have two of them. They're giant 12-wheeled armored personnel carriers. They can go up a 60-degree incline. Their wheels are on separated tracks that rotate and 180 degrees, and they can also drive in water. They decide they're going to go cross-country and see if they can find the source of these mysterious radio signals. They go up into the high desert in the Sierras somewhere, and they find Dominique Sanda and Jackie Earle Haley hiding out from these kind of cannibal mountain men who are trying to get them and eat them or whatever. And they destroy them. They're hanging out in an old gas station. They destroy the gas station with the Landmasters, which are equipped with missiles and flamethrowers and cannons. And so they take out these mountain men, and they rescue Dominique Sanda and Jackie Earle Haley, and she starts forming kind of a romantic attachment for Jan-Michael Vincent. And they're going to go ahead and forge on towards Albany. They have to go through the middle of the country, and they're struck by storms and lightning, and one of the landmasters is swamped, and with Paul Winfield, I think, and his crewmate on it, and they drown, but Peppard and Jan-Michael Vincent and their crew survive, and they go on, and they start to break down towards Detroit, or what was Detroit, and it turns out that the landmasters are built so that they can use truck parts as spares. I thought that was a good bit of writing. So they find an old truck junkyard, basically, and they're able to replace a couple of the tires that blew and the parts of the transmission. But they also do something horrifying, killer cockroaches. And these were like so gross, they really freaked me out. In fact, they're enormous, and there are millions of them, and they can strip a person to the skeleton in like 15 seconds, something like that. And a couple of survivors in the Detroit truck area are trying to help them. They have flamethrowers, and they're chasing the cockroaches off. And I think, as I recall, I think George Peppard is killed, but Jan-Michael Vincent and the others get away, and they make it to Albany and find this like almost perfect community that's like something out of a 1950s sitcom. It's white picket fences and houses, and kids on bicycles and dogs and milkmen driving down the street. And I was like, what the heck? How did these people survive? So close to a major population center. Basically, if New York City was wiped out, Albany ain't going to make it either. And, nobody has radiation sickness. Nobody's got radiation burns. Nobody's dying. Totally unbelievable. It's really quite a bad movie. It's garnered a cult status, and I don't know why. I don't know why anybody would want to watch this again after having seen it the first time. I wanted my money back from the theater. But the Landmasters themselves are pretty cool, and I saw one of them back in the 80s. They were on display in the Universal Studios tour. Interesting, because this picture came out from 20th Century, not Universal. But they used the Landmasters over and over again. They used them on a show I remember called, I think it was called New Earth or Nova or something like that. They'd used them over. They would just redress. They obviously had one full-scale one, because I saw it. And they would just redress the outside and change it around a bit. And I do remember seeing, I think, like a show called New Earth, I think, or Arc 2 also was one where they used the Landmaster again. And I think it might have been used in the TV version of Logan's Run, too, I believe. I'm not sure. I might be wrong about that. But they're really they and Dominique Sanda are the only good things about this movie.